All right, click the links to join the channel here over at Subscribestar. Ignore the crows in the background. So Shazam, Fury of the Gods, is to be a lot more forthright about Pedro being BLT. Okay, well, I think then we need to be a lot more forthright about us not wanting to see this sort of thing. And social media is the perfect way to express those views. I think it's time to do. I think it's time to start fighting the culture war and stop being so passive about this. Oh, to bring into the public the idea that the audience is not on board with this sort of propaganda aimed at kids. But there's a second issue: is that Hollywood knows this kind of like the scenes in the Eternals, and there's a couple scenes in the Marvel movies and the Star Wars movies, that kind of BLT stuff. Like they know it's not selling, but they're doing it anyway. And see, that's what I think. I think that's the other important issue to discuss: the concept that they're doing something they know is against their financial interests, and just start asking like, well, why? If you're not doing this for a fiduciary reason, why exactly are you doing it? Because it seems like if it's not pecuniary, then it's ideological. And let's put that on the table and start looking at the ideology of the people who are doing this. Why are they spreading this message? What exactly is this message? Who are they? And just to start bringing it out into the public discourse, so people can reject it, can push back against it, can start discussing it more openly, and not just keep allowing it to be pushed without just this passivity of a lot of the right wing is kind of what gets me. Because that being passive is a losing strategy. It's what helped us get us to these current biblical levels of Sodom and Gomorrah. If you look around, it's like, how are you? If you're under a certain age, it's like this stuff is what you grew up with, I guess. But if you're over a certain age and you look around at the stuff that's going on right now with kids and schools, and like that this is accelerating to a boiling point. It just, like, historically this kind of stuff doesn't end well. It would be great if you could cut this off at the pass, but there's just too many people who are kind of passively letting this stuff go. So it sounds sort of weird, but I think that people should start talking about some of these pop cultural Marxist things to kind of inform other people, because there's a lot of people who are not paying attention, or maybe as far down the rabbit hole. And if you're not paying attention, this probably comes as like, if you're over 40 or 50, you're looking around and you're probably wondering what exactly is going on here. History will tell you. So there's a lot of people on the right who just kind of have this hands-off approach where they just let things go. They don't like the direction movies are going, so they just stop watching. But what they don't understand is that their opinion matters. This is a culture war. This is one aspect of it. You have the right to talk about it. Your opinion matters, and you're sitting in silence. And there's these, very, very loud, Bolshevik SJW type of kids who are shouting at the top of their lungs, and they think their opinion matters, but their opinion is actually evil, and you're sitting back and allowing it to happen. It's like, well, it's probably time to stop sitting back and get involved. And a good approach is not just to be purposely aggressive on social media, just pretend to be a little naive about political correctness and cultural sensitivities. I have so much fun when I'm on Twitter. You can like make the steam come out of people's ears a lot of times, but then Twitter starts putting you on lists, like truly horrible people of Twitter and all similar things to that. And you're like, that's stochastic terrorism, which you're putting people on lists, but it's okay when the left does it. Because what happens in the real world, if you say that you're not going to pay for degeneracy, you're not going to show your family this cultural Marxist propaganda, that it's not your values, because you're family focused, and this sort of thing doesn't fit with those values of upholding the core family as the highest goal, which is probably like, there's some of us, we all have different ideologies, but also, like, some are Christian, some are other things, but it's all kind of like, if you had to boil it down to one ideology, it would probably be like the family must be protected. And it's the core influence from the family in raising kids, and not this outside influence, like, Weingarten or the teachers union, and the teachers and teachers unions in general, and school boards and the school councils seem to really think that the government needs to control your kids. And you're like, well, logically that doesn't make sense that someone outside the family would have the child's best interests at heart. So there's a very serious schism between that concept. And anyway, what happens on social media is if you put you should see what happens on social media when people talk about homeschools. Left-wing people lose their freaking minds over that because they know the importance of this Bolshevik brainwashing for kids. And when you take the kids out of the government schools and you put them in the homeschools or small based neighborhood schools that the parents are controlling, the left wing absolutely goes crazy at the idea of losing those kids and go, oh, they won't be adjusted to their peers. It's like that means they won't be brainwashed into government propaganda. Yeah, we don't want them brainwashed in government. We don't want them adjusted to your worldview. We see the blue-haired teachers of TikTok. They're all mentally ill, and they're teaching kids to be little mentally ill commie kids. To be adjusted to that is insane. And the thing is, homeschool kids outperform government school kids. Like, in every regard. It's like, yeah, what else would you expect? The government, you see how what they're teaching in government schools, and it's absolute cancer. Anyway, so the thing is, what happens on social media is immediate ad hominem and straw man arguments. So eventually people, they get their fingers burned. They learn not to speak up because they don't think the fight is worth it. But it is, and that's what I'm trying to say is, and the thing is, you don't have to fight or get emotionally invested in it. Just say a bunch of hot words about degeneracy, Frankfurt School, Bolshevism, Saul Alinsky's rule for radicals, or that this stuff is anti-family, it's brainwashing kids, and why is Hollywood so focused on sexualizing kids? You can have a bunch of cut and paste comments to just put out there. It's a lot of fun. Like if you're going to be on Twitter, don't just use it passively, like use it to fight the culture war. And this stuff is sick and gross, and it's okay to say that. And Hollywood and the people who support and defend it are supporting the abuse and brainwashing of kids. You see how far things have degraded by people just sitting back and I just want to grill, man. It's like, well, that just allows the slippery slope to turn vertical. These people pushing this are evil. Take a look at America 50 years ago and 20 years ago. Now look at us now and start looking into the future. Guess what they're going to be doing in the very near future? And who's going to stop it? We don't stop what is happening now. We just passively allow it all to happen. That's why it's important to fight every aspect of the culture war, even if it just starts bringing to people's minds the concept of irreconcilable differences, that we have fundamentally different values. Unfortunately, the schools and media are controlled by people with those other demonic values, and there's no winning them over. There's only separation. You see, the schools are so far gone now that you're not going to take those schools over. It would take years. It would take like a religious movement on the right, because the conservative secular movement is a losing strategy. And I don't say that because I'm religious. I say that because I'm just observing it and coming to a logical conclusion, even if a logical conclusion leads to a somewhat less rational solution in religion. But if you can look at it and go, oh yeah, that's the winning solution. It's like, okay, well then you have to go in that direction, even if you're not really inclined to it. It's the way of the world. You would need like a revival of right when people to get massively involved in the schools and take them over. I just don't see that happening, but I do see something more likely of people just pulling out of government schools in their entirety and making homeschools, small base national schools. Because I mean, you could have a neighborhood school, you could have like teach a dozen kids and have the parents. I mean, there's an issue with like tax credits and property taxes and stuff like that are funding schools. It's like, I mean, schools shouldn't even be funded at all. They should be like schools should obviously, like anytime the government, I want to go down this. The government getting involved in schools, and you see like, oh, what happened since the government got involved in the schools? Oh, education levels have fallen ever since they got involved. Oh, well, we need to get more funding. You know, the IQ of America was rising from 1930s to 2000, about 2006, I think, and then the IQ started dropping. Oh, quick, more money for schools. Oh, really? Okay. Maybe that's not the solution. Like trying to catch a falling knife, throwing more good money after bad. Keep putting money into the pot when you have no hand. It's like you're not even sitting at the card table. None of this makes sense. The government education is creating these less like dumber kids than a teaching kids in your garage, if you taught a dozen kids in your garage and had the parents just, okay, we'll pay you, a couple, it's like you think what you pay for streaming and all this like extra crap you don't need. You go like, okay, we'll pay this lady, who wants to teach the kids anyway. We'll all like a dozen parents will sit down, decide the curriculum, just, real basic stuff. The history, like imagine like what you're teaching kids in the 1950s. We'll just go back to something like that. Teaching kids how awesome they and their history are, based nationalism type of stuff. And like cut out all the extra crap you spend money on and give it to the teacher and like teach a dozen kids in your living room or your whatever. You get the idea. It's like it's entirely possible if you really want to do it. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to teach kids. And it's the most critical thing. That's why I'm going to it. If you had a generation where you're like homeschooling became a thing, and it's growing, but if it massively blew up, the country would change instantly because you would have a different focus. The kids would be family focused, tribe focused, nation focused, neighborhood focused. It would change things very, very seriously, which is why I've done a couple of videos on it on Odyssey and Bit Chute. Anyway, the thing is, there are these irreconcilable differences. And the only way, like the left just thinks they're going to keep pushing this stuff and eventually they're going to win you over. And they will if you stay passive. But if you start bringing up like, oh, we have different values and we're not going to change your values, you're not going to change ours. We have irreconcilable differences. There is no satisfaction in accord. There's no meeting in the middle. This schism cannot be crossed. You have to get that concept out. And like, we don't want you to rule our kids or our family. The family wants to be in charge of the kids' education because anyone can teach kids. It's like, get a bunch of books on history and the basics. It's really not the hardest thing to teach a bunch of kids, even high school kids. It's pretty basic stuff. I guarantee you can find someone's dad to come in and teach the calculus, the chemistry, and the physics if you want to have those kind of classes. And as well, you should. It's really not. Well, let me drop a little sexism in there, but you know how it is. It's like most guys who've been in. There's tons of guys who've had science courses who can teach you if the kids want to learn calculus, physics, differential equations, chemistry. There's a ton of dads who could come in and teach those courses. You could have it like one day a week, like college classes, teach it instead of every day. And then you can have a dad come in and teach like the one day of the science classes. Anyone who's got like a BS degree or just an interest in science can teach the basics of chemistry and physics. It's not, and even the advanced sciences, it's like you can learn that if you want to learn it. It's like all this stuff is very, very critically important. It's like you don't have to. I'm not saying like the dad needs to have you don't need to have like a master's in engineering or something to teach like what high school physics and chemistry and even calculus is all about. It's really not as complicated. And maybe there's some moms out there who could learn that stuff. Not many, to be fair, not many. But I think there's a couple out there. Anyway, I do know chicks who could teach that, but it is mostly. The thing is, this isn't about some stupid movie. We got to start normalize talking about the message that is being put out, and it's not politically correct to discuss it. Which means if you accept that, they have total control of the narrative coming and going because they can put toxic propaganda out there, and if you criticize it, well, they just try to cancel you. So people just avoid the topics, and the left just keeps accelerating this type of cancer. And the only way it stops is if we have to just start talking about it in a very what do they call it, forthright manner. About this kind of thing. And it's not politically correct, but to push right, like when you start talking about this, the reason they ad hominem, deflect, and strawman on social media is because they're sending you a warning. Like James Gunn was getting involved with some Twitter guy yesterday about the Guardians of the Galaxy race swapping some characters, and he immediately called the guy istophobic and all this kind of stuff. They're sending you a warning. They don't want to have the discussion on the merits of the discussion. They just want to dog. They want this. They send this. They call you istophobic so the crowd will dogpile you, and they'll send you this subtle warning that don't dare complain about characters being erased. Anyway, but the thing is, but you have to start talking about this kind of stuff, because if enough people jump in the Twitter comments with James Gunn and go, yeah, we don't want to see the characters erased either. It's like if your only argument is to call someone istophobic, you're not engaging in the argument. It's just a straw man and an ad hominem. And if enough people say that, you make the guy look like an idiot, because like that is half of Twitter is their argument, because they don't have a good argument of why you'd erase characters and replace characters. It doesn't make sense unless like you just bring up, oh, this seems like cultural Marxism, because that's exactly what it is. You're trying to degrade and humiliate one group of people to push some kind of agenda. It's like you got to start. I mean, Twitter's out there. You're on Twitter anyway. You might as well start using it to do battle. Anyway, like, comment, subscribe. See you guys all next episode.